Okay, so good evening once again. So today we're going to actually be looking at activity life cycle. Okay, that's basically what we're going to be looking at today, activity life cycle. So, well, of course, I want to believe you know what a life cycle is. Okay, some of us who have actually heard of it before. Okay, so that's also want to look at activities. Okay, how from the point where they are actually created to the point where they are actually destroyed. Yes, I know it might sound weird, destroyed. Yes, but that's actually that. So activity life cycle. That's what we're actually going to be looking at, and I'm actually going to be using an already developed code. Okay, just to point out some certain things. So I didn't actually write this code, so let me just make that clear. So that's that. Okay, so we're going to be exploring the lifecycle methods and also look at logging in Kotlin or in Android Studio, rather. Okay, so every activity has what is known as a life cycle. Okay, so just like some animals have life cycle, like the most recent, the ones we actually know commonly, the butterfly, where you have from the they say the egg, the larva, pupa, imagos, stuff like that we learned back in high school. Okay, get to the maggot and then the butterfly, all those stages. So those are actually what life cycles. Okay, so basically it just shows the different states from of which the butterfly shows its growth, from birth to when it is fully formed. Okay, adulthood and even to death. Actually, that's just looking at the life cycle of a butterfly. So similarly, activities also have life cycle, and it's made up of different states that an activity goes through. Okay, your activity life cycle is just made up of different states that your activity goes through or can go through, from when the activity is first initialized to when it is finally destroyed and its memory is reclaimed by the system. Okay, so the thing is, as the user actually starts the application, okay, navigates between activities, that is between screens, okay, navigates inside and outside of the application, your activity actually changes state. Okay, it changes state. So so we're going to look at some of those states actually, and we'll actually look at it in code. Now, we have the states we have the initialized states, we have the uncreated states, we have the started states, we have the resumed states. Okay, now and then you also have, so these are actually states that life cycles actually for an activity. You have the initialized, uncreate, started, resumed, we have the destroyed also. So in these states there are various methods. Okay, because there's often you actually want to change some behavior or probably run some code when the activity life cycle state changes. Maybe when it is initialized, you might want to do something. When it is created, you might want to do something. Okay, so the activity class itself and any sub classes of activity, such as your app compact activity that you've seen. So let me just share my screen and then show us that. Okay, Android Studio. Okay, so yeah, just like this is actually a sub class. Okay, so yeah, this main activity is kind of what a subclass of this guy. Okay, open this up. So if I actually open this up, you see that app compact activity. Okay, so it's inside this class. Okay, it extends your fragment activity and everything. So all these they're just sub activities. Okay, so just to reiterate that. Okay, so don't worry, we're not really using this for now. So yeah, where was I? Okay, so activity class itself and any other sub class, okay, they implement a set of lifecycle callback methods. Okay, so these are callback methods actually. So Android actually invokes these methods when the activity moves from one state to another. And the beautiful thing about it is that you can actually override these methods in your activities to perform a particular task in response to those methods. Okay, so this is it. This is how it goes. Now, when your activity is initialized, okay, when your activity is initialized, okay, after initialization, it is created. Now, in that process, the Oncreate method is called. Okay, now after it is created, that it now goes, the next phase is the what started. Now, in that started phase, the Onstart method is called, or Onrestart method is called. After that, you have the resumed state, of which you have the Onresume method being called. Now, after it is resumed, you can actually come back down, okay? From resumed, it can actually move down to the started state, of which there you now have the on pause. Okay, you now have the on pause. Now, after that, then we have so after that, we also now have what we call the on stop. That's when it's now moving from the started to the created. It is not the on stop method is now what called, and then finally from the created down to the destroyed, the on destroy method is actually what called. Okay, so we're actually going to see how these these methods are actually being called. We're actually going to see how they are called in a bit. So I'm going to use this application. We're actually going to be using an application to really explain all these things. So let me share the Android Studio. Okay. So apologies, I'm kind of having, yeah, just need to, so just give me a second, fix this. Okay, so let's do this. Let me share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen? I'm sure you can see my Android Studio. Just indicate that you can see my Android Studio. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so let's now actually look at this. Let's examine these whole methods and the states to know. So with this, this can actually even help you debug. Okay, we're going to get to talk about log. Okay, because it's actually important to know when these callbacks are invoked, when these methods are actually what's invoked, and what to do in each callback method. Okay, so this is the first thing we're going to do. We're going to examine our Oncreate method and add what we call a login. Okay, log, L-O-G-I-N-G. Okay, so let me open this. So this is our Oncreate. Okay, so this is our Oncreate method. Okay, so we're going to actually figure out what's going on here and what's going on as regards the Android lifecycle. Okay, so one of the ways we're going to do that is login, Android login functionality. Okay, so login actually enables you to write short messages to the console while the app is actually running, and you can actually, we'll use these messages to show when different callback methods are actually being triggered. Okay, so I've actually run, so let me just run this. Let me run this, and then let's get to see how this application looks like. So okay, so okay, I think this is going to, okay. It's actually, maybe I'll just keep it here. Okay, so I think I'll just have to close it up and run it again. Okay, so while that is actually while I'm trying to fix up that, so I can share that also. Now, remember I said when your activity is initialized, okay, the next thing is that it goes into the created state, and then the Oncreate method is actually what called. Okay, so we're going to actually we're actually going to check if that is actually true. Okay, we're going to check if that is actually true. So let's do this. So will this show now? Okay, yeah. So this is actually the application. So basically what this does, having to click on this, there's that clicker, just having to click on it, gets to do a lot of some calculations, you see how much and everything like that. So that's basically what that is done. That does actually. So we're going to override the Oncreate method. Okay, and of course, when you override this Uncreate method, you must actually call the superclass implementation. Okay, when you override any method. Okay, so let's do this. I'm just going to add a log message. Okay, I'm going to add a log message. So this is just what I'm going to do. So just below the super.onCreate, I'm going to say log. Say log. Okay, so log.d. Okay, it takes a tag, which is a string, and then a message. I'll actually explain what all that does. I'm going to say main activity. Okay, and then I'm going to pass in a message. So the message I want to pass is I want to say on create called. Okay, that's just the message I want to pass. Okay, so what are we actually doing here? What are we doing here? The log class, okay, because this log is a class, the log class actually writes message to our log cat. So where is our log cat? Okay, so this is our log cat. Okay, I'm just going to open this up. Okay, good. So you can see a whole lot of things. You see a lot here. Of course, we have actually seen our log cat. So the log class writes messages to the log cat. Okay, so the log cat is just a console for logging messages. You know, messages from Android about your application will definitely actually appears here, including the ones you explicitly send to the log using this log.d method or every other log class methods. Okay, so we're going to look at that. So let's look at this line of code. Let's look at this line of code. So there are three parts to this command. There are actually three parts. Now, the first one is the priority of the log message. Okay, that the priority actually is talking about how important that message is. So in this case, when we say log.d, okay, this log.d method writes a debug message. Okay, it writes a debug message. Now we have other methods. Okay, we have the log.i. That's for informational messages. We have log.e, that's for errors. We have log.w, that's for warnings, and then we have log.v, that's for verbose messages. Well, some of these things we may not have to really talk about much of them, but as we move, we get to use them. Okay, so that's the first, that's one part, the first part of the command. Okay, so this talks about the word priority. So the next part is this tag. Okay, the log tag, which is actually the first parameter. Okay, so in this case, we're actually using main activity. So the tag is actually just a string that lets you, find your log messages easily. So it's just a tag to help you find your log messages easily in your log cat. But so typically, we actually just use the name of the class for the tag. And then the last part of the command is the actual log message. Okay, the actual log message, that's the second parameter here, where we say onCreate is what called. Now, the truth is a very good convention is to declare a tag constant in our class. Okay, so we don't have to always use, write out main activity. So I could actually just do that in our class. So let me just close this first. So in the class here, I could just create a constant. I could just say const val. And then I'm going to say tag, and then let's see main. I hope I'm right. Activity. So let's see. Okay, so they're only on top level or in object. So let's just put it in an let's put it in a companion object. So that actually, okay, sure. Let's just put this here. Okay, so that's fine. So, so instead of having to now say main activity here, I'll just take this out and I'll just say tag. Yeah, just use tag. So this is actually a very good convention. So you don't actually have to, always write out that. Okay, so you can use tag subsequently as in your calls to the log methods. Okay, so this is actually the const. Okay, is actually what we call a compile time constant. Okay, it's a value that won't change. Okay, it's a compile time constant. It's a value that will not change. Okay, so you just use this to actually make any variable a const. So let's now run this. I'm going to run this now. Okay, so let me open up my log cards. Okay, so gradual building. Okay, so it's still running. So let's wait for it to run. Okay. Okay, so we have to reinstall and restart. So okay, so that's done. It has actually run. So now let's now go to our log cart window. So we want to actually see if if the Uncreate method is called. So how do we find that? Okay, so this is basically what I'm going to do. Well, I can actually just change this to debug. Okay, so we can actually just see debug messages, and then to easily find the log message, we now use what the tag. So first of all, I would put the priority, which is the D, and then I'm just going to say slash, and then I'll now say the main activity, so you can actually see it. Main activity. So you see it's Oncreate what called, which was the message that we passed in here at the log in the log distance. So of course, the log card actually contains many messages, most of which they are not actually useful to you now. So basically what I've just done is to filter it by adding the D slash, okay, which means that it's a debug message created by our log.d. Okay, so you can actually see that our log, it actually has date and time. It also has the name of the package. Okay, the name of the package, and then your log tag, which is the D, okay, and then the actual message. Because this message appears in the log, you now know that the Oncreate has been executed because it appeared here. If it did not appear, that means your Oncreate has not been called, or executed. So that's for Oncreate. So remember, so after your app is in the created state, the next is the started state. So we'll now check the method called Onstart. So of course, let's now find out if Onstart. So the Onstart lifecycle method, okay, is called just after Oncreate. Okay, so after Onstart runs, your activity is visible on the screen. This is visible. So once your activity is visible on the screen, it means that your Oncreate has been called. It also means that your Onstart, okay, has been called. So after the Onstart runs, your activity is visible on the screen. Unlike Oncreate, Oncreate is actually called only once to initialize your activity. That's what Oncreate does. It's only called once to initialize your activity, but Onstart can be called many times. It can be called many times. Of course, if I minimize this, if I actually do this, it's no longer visible to the screen. Okay, it's no longer visible to the screen. But of course, when using your Android phones, you know that you can still go back to the application. So we did not recreate this application again from the start. No. So we just went back to where we were, which is this screen. So Onstart can be one, and of course, like I said, once your activity is visible, that means Onstart has been called. So your Onstart method can be called many times in the life cycle of your activity. So your Onstart has a corresponding Onstop lifecycle method. I'm going to drop a series of, I'm just going to drop a link that will actually show us a diagram of the whole of that. Okay, so your Onstart actually has a corresponding Onstop lifecycle method. So if the user starts your application and then returns to the home screen, that is basically this. You started your application. So this is Onstart. Onstart has been called. So if I return to the home screen, okay, my app is no longer visible. The activity is no longer visible. The activity is what stopped. and it's no longer visible on the screen. At this point, the onStop method has been executed or has been called. Okay, so let's actually now, let's test this. Let's check this. So I'm going to override all those methods now. I'll override the onStart method, and then let's see. So this is how we're going to do it. So I'm just going to come to, so okay, so let's see where, okay, I'll Uncreate. Let's see, where does it, okay, so it ends here. So I can just do this below my Oncreate method. Okay, so I want to override all those callbacks. So I can just say Control O, and that will give me a lot of methods that I can override. So I'm looking for onStart. Okay, so let's see. Well, it's going to be, well, this can take time. Well, this is it actually, but this can actually take a lot of time. So you can actually just start typing onStart, and then it comes up for you. So override function. So let's override this function now and see when it's actually being called. Okay, so just below the super.onStart, I'm going to now say log.d. Okay, so now we already have a tag, so I don't have to create a new one. So I'm just going to add a tag, and then I'm going to now pass in my message. I'm going to say onStart called. Okay, so let's actually now see, let's get to see this. Okay, so let me run this application. Let's open up our logcat. Okay, so let's actually see what is going on here. Okay, so we have to reinstall and restart. So our logcat is open, and then you can actually see our onStart is what called. So we have onCreate is called, and after it's visible to the screen, onStart is called. Okay, so let's do that again. So let me just, so let me, you know what, let's close it up. Okay, that's fine. And then let's get to run this again. So I want you to, so I'm going to clear this. So I want you to actually see. So you see it, onCreate is called first, and then once it is visible, then you have onStart. Okay, so how about other methods? Okay, how about other methods? Now, if I close this, so we are not seeing any method being called, right? Okay, but actually there is, and we'll find out which method. But coming back to the screen, you can see onStart is called again. Okay, so onStart is called when the activity is visible. Okay, when it is actually visible. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's move forward. So let's add, I'm just going to add every other callback method we have. I'll just add all of them, and then let's get to see how that all works. So okay, so I'm just going to copy this. Actually, I won't have to. So I'm going to call the, so we have an onResume method. Okay, and then I'm going to pass this, and I'm just going to say onResume called. Okay, we have the onPause, and I'm going to say onPause called. So it's very important to know when these lifecycle methods are actually called. It's very important to know the state of your application. So when you're having issues with your application, okay, you know at what state does this problem actually occur or happen. So we also have the, okay, so on resume on, so let's go to the onStop. Okay, so onStop. So I'm just going to say onStop called. You can actually do this with any application. It mustn't be this one. You could just create, you could actually just create a Hello World application and test this out, and you get to see that. So okay, so on destroy, that's another method. Sorry about that. On destroy, I'm going to add a log. So I'm going to say on destroy called. And then the last one we're just going to do here is the on restart. Okay, so, and then on restart called. Okay, so yeah, these are the methods. We have the on create is up there, on start, on resume, on pause, on stop, on destroy, and then on restart. So let's see when these methods are being called. Okay, let's see when these methods are being called. So let's run this, open up this guy, clear this. Let's clear this guy. So we have it. So let's do this. So so when you notice something, okay, that when the activity starts, okay, so log cat. So notice this, when the activity starts from the scratch, you see all three of these lifecycle callbacks, which is in order: on create, on start, and on resume. Okay, on create is called first, on start. So on create, this is what happens, okay, and you really need to take note of this. On create is to create the application. So on create method creates the app. On start, starts the application and makes it visible to the screen. Then on resume gives the activity focus and makes it ready for the user to interact with it. On create creates the application. On start starts the application by makes it visible to the screen. And then on resume gives the activity focus and makes it ready for the user to interact. So I know you might be saying, okay, on resume, doesn't it have focus already? Well, you get to actually see why on resume is actually not the same as on start. Because you might be saying, well, it's visible to the screen now, so doesn't it have focus? Well, we'll get to see that. Okay, so let's actually now move on. Let's now explore the rest. Okay, so let's see how can we know when every other method, all these other on pause, stop, destroy, and the rest. So let's explore the other use cases. Okay, so the use case one, I'm going to open and close the activity. Okay, I think that's the most easiest for now. So open and close. So that's case one. So we'll close it. So let's just do this. Okay, let's do step by step. Clear this out, bring this guy back, run this. Okay, so first use case, opening and closing the activity. Okay, so I've opened it on create, on start, on resume. Now closing the activity. Okay, basically it's just close the app down. Okay, so let's now do something. So I'm going to just tap on this. Okay, so we have some values here. Okay, then I'm actually going to tap this back button on the device. Okay, and then let's see the method that we called. So I'm going to tap the back button. Now you can see what happens. The first method that is called is on pause. And then you have on stop being called, and then you have on destroy. They are called, look at the order: on pause, on stop, and then on destroy. Okay, so using the back button, actually, it causes the activity to be entirely closed. You're not seeing it again. So the execution of this on destroy method means that the activity was fully shut down and can be garbage collected. Okay, so garbage collection it just actually means it's like it's the automatic cleanup of objects that you no longer use. That's basically what garbage collection is. Just cleaning up objects that you will not use. So after this on destroy method is called, the system knows that those resources are discardable, and then it starts cleaning up memory. That's basically what's going on here. Okay, so that's actually that. But the truth is, your activity may also be completely shut down if your code, manually calls there's a method, the finish method. Okay, there's a finish method, or if you actually just force, quit the app. Maybe you minimize and just swipe it out. Okay, for example, you can actually do that. You can close the app in the recent screen, like I said, just by doing this. Okay, like doing this. That's also, you're also going to destroy it. it rather. So now the Android system may shut down your activity on its own if your app has not been on screen for a long time. It may just shut it down. That's why you notice when you minimize an application, if you're doing something and you minimize it, if it takes so long and you go back there, you may not, in fact, you don't, depends on the time. Okay, if it's so long, you don't go back to exactly where you were. You can try it with Facebook. Okay, if it takes so long, okay, it will reload the application. Okay, so that's at the Android system, may actually just shut down your activity on its own if your app has actually been if it has been off screen for a long time. And the reason it does this, okay, is to actually preserve battery and to allow your app resources to be used by other applications. Okay, so let's go back to the application. Where do we have it? Okay, this. So let's open it out. Let's open it again. So we have our Uncreate, Onstart, Unresume, okay, as usual, okay, because it's starting up, because it was destroyed before. That's why it's now what's creating it again. So when returning to the application, it starts up the new activity by calling the Uncreate, Onstart, and Unresume. But notice that on resume. So that's actually that. Okay. So the key point here is that on create and on destroy are only called once. Every other methods can actually be called many times. But on create and on destroy are only called once during the lifetime of a single activity instance. On create initializes the app for the very first time. On destroy cleans up the resources used by your application. So that's actually very good to note. So the Uncreate is actually is an important step, because this is where all your first time initialization goes. This is where you set up your layout for the first time. That's why you see in your activity you have set content view, and the likes of them. This is where you set up the layout for the first time by inflating it. Is where you initialize your variables. Okay, so that's the first case. So let's look at a use case where you navigate away from and back to the activity. Okay, so let's see how can we replicate that. Okay, so let's see, when you're trying to interact with other applications, okay, how does this go? Okay, because we have actually seen all the lifecycle states that the activity goes through when it gets completely shut down and destroyed. But when you now interact with other Android devices, okay, like you understand, they switch applications and return home, start new apps, handle interruptions and the rest, such as phone call and everything. So your activity does not close down entirely every time you actually navigate away from that activity. So when your activity is no longer visible on the screen, okay, that is basically where you're putting your activity in the background. Okay. The opposite of this is when the activity is in the foreground, that is on screen. So when your activity is not visible, that means it's actually at the background. So the opposite of it is the foreground. So foreground, that means on screen. Background, okay, that means not on screen, that is not visible. So when the user now returns to the application, that same activity is restarted and becomes visible again. So this is also part of the life cycle, okay? And this part is actually called the app's visible life cycle. Okay, so let's try to replicate that. So I'm just going to click on this image here. Then I'll press the home button. Okay, press the home button, and then you get to see on pause and on stop. Those are the two methods, but on destroy is not called. So when the on pause is called, the app no longer has focus. You need to take note of these things. When the on pause method is called, your app no longer has focus. After on stop, the app is no longer visible on the screen. So the process of clicking the home button and it disappears. First of all, the on pause, meaning that it doesn't have focus anymore. And then on stop, it is no longer visible on the screen. Now, although your activity has actually been stopped, the activity object is still in memory. We didn't close it, we didn't destroy it. So the object of that activity is still in memory in the background. Okay, so because you can actually return to the application. So Android will just keep your activity resources around, but when it stays too long, it can actually just remove it. So let's go back into the application by using our recent system. Okay, so just going back, you then see on restart, you then see on start, and then you see on resume. Okay, so now when your activity returns to the foreground, of course, we know the Uncreate is not called again. Okay, we know that the activity object was also not destroyed. It wasn't destroyed, so we don't need to create it again. So instead of calling Oncreate, it calls the onRestart method. That's why we have this one come first. Okay, instead of calling Oncreate, it calls the onRestart method. So by this time, your activity returns to the foreground. Okay, the activity returns to the foreground. You can actually now see these the numbers. This desert sold, this number is visible. The number is still retained. Okay, so you can actually test that on your phone, just any other application, and just to see how it actually would works rather. Okay, so that's basically that. So just to recap, the onPause and the onStop, they are actually called when your application goes into the background. Okay, then when it wants to come back, we have on restart, on start, and then on resume. Okay, so that is for that use case. Okay, now the third use case we're going to look at is when you partially hide the activity. Partially hiding. So you might be wondering, how are we going to partially hide the activity? So well, we've actually talked about the fact that when your app is started, the onStart is called. That means it is visible to the screen. And when the app is resumed, your onResume is called, meaning that the app has gained focus. Okay, on start and then on resume. So on resume means it has gained focus. Okay, so this actually gain focus means that the user can interact with the application. That's what that means. Okay, so this part of the life cycle where your app is fully on screen and has user focus, this is actually called interactive life cycle. We've actually looked at visible life cycle. So this is the interactive life cycle. When your app goes to the background, the focus is actually lost. The focus being lost means you cannot interact with the application because it has gone to the background. So the focus is lost after onPause is called. And then the app is no longer visible after onStop. So focus is lost once onPause is called. And then visibility lost after onStop. So the difference between focus and visibility is very important. Okay, because it's possible for an activity to be partially visible on the screen, but not have user focus. And we're going to see how that actually is for some of us who might be asking. Okay, so we'll look at a case where an activity is partially visible but does not have focus. And how can we actually test that theory? Well, we're going to just test it by using this share icon. Okay, so you can actually look at, so when I click on this share, you can actually see only onPause is called. OnStop is not called because OnStop is called when it's no longer visible. The app is still visible, okay, but it has lost focus. That's why onPause is called. Focus in the sense that you can't interact with the application now. You can't click on any button in the application. Okay, so onStop is not called because the activity is partially visible, but the activity does not have focus, so you can't actually interact with it. So this share, the share activity that's in the foreground is what has focus. So this share activity, that is what now has focus. Okay, so why is this difference actually important? Well, the interruption with only onPause usually lasts for a short time before returning to your activity or probably navigating to another activity. So you generally actually want to keep updating the UI so the rest of your application doesn't appear to freeze. Okay, so whatever code runs in your onPause, okay, blocks other things from displaying. That's just the truth. Whatever code runs in your on-pause will block other things from displaying, because in your pause, it means the application has, that particular thing has what it has lost what focus. Okay, so it's good to keep your on-pause method lightweight. Okay, you don't really have a lot going on there. For example, like if you have a phone call coming in, the code in the on-pause may delay the notification, the incoming call notification. I don't know how many of us have actually noticed that your phone, you have a call coming in. Okay, so it's like the notification is actually delayed a bit. The incoming call notification is delayed a bit. Okay, so some of us must have noticed this thing, but we don't really understand it because we don't know about states and life cycle. Okay, so I'm actually going to click outside of this dialogue to return to the application. Okay, maybe I don't want to share anything. I just want to return to the application. So by clicking outside this dialogue on resume, so that means I have what. So what happens on resume? Okay, I have focus. So both on resume and on pause have to just do with focus. So the on resume is now called when the activity has focus, and on pause is called when the activity loses focus. Okay, so that's basically a lot about the whole life cycle, some of these methods. Okay, but there's one other thing I want us to look at. I don't know how many of you have had this issue in an application where you are maybe typing something or you have a result of something, but when you actually change the configuration, like the orientation, probably to landscape, you now lose what you were typing, or you lose what you were typing, or you lose something. Okay, so we're going to explore configuration changes. This is another case in managing activity lifecycle that's very important to understand. Like, this is very important because configuration changes affects the life cycle of your activities. Like, it affects it a lot. Now, so a configuration change actually, it happens when the state of your device changes so radically that the easiest way for the system to resolve the change is to completely shut down and rebuild the activity. That's a configuration change. It happens when the state of your device, okay, it changes so fast that the easiest way the system can just resolve that change is to, let me just shut down and rebuild the activity. For example, if the user changes the device language. Now the whole layout may actually need to change to accommodate different, text directions and string lengths, because I am coming, okay, in English. If you want to translate it to another language, the words might be shorter or longer. So when you change device language, your whole layout actually needs to change to accommodate, the text directions and string lengths. So if the user actually plugs the device, or maybe adds a physical keyboard, your app layout may also need to take advantage of, the different display size or layouts. And if your orientation changes, which we're going to look into, that is if the device is this is rotated from maybe landscape to portrait or portrait to landscape, okay, the layout may also need to change to fit the new orientation. So let's actually look at how your app will behave in this scenario. Okay, so let me just clear this. Let me clear this out, and then let's just wait. So this is what we have. Okay, this is what we have. Now, of course, you can see we have 7, we have 45 here. So I want to rotate my device to landscape mode. Okay, I want to rotate it. So let me click in on this. So now, do you see what happens? We have on pause, on stop. So first of all, it lost focus. It was no longer visible. It destroyed it, and then it created it again. And then that's why you see we have lost the values that were there before. Okay, so this is actually a problem. Okay, this is actually a challenge that needs to be looked into. So basically, when we rotate the screen, the system calls all the life cycle calls back it calls them to shut down the activity. Then as the activity is recreated, the system will now call the lifecycle callbacks to start the activity. Okay, so when the device is rotated and the activity is not shut down and recreated, the activity starts off with default values. That is, of course, we can see 0, and then everything just resets. Okay, so how can we solve this? How can we actually solve this problem? Okay, so we're going to make use of a method called Unsave instance state to save a bundle data. Okay, so the Unsave instance state method is actually a callback you use to save any data that you might need if the activity is destroyed. We use that to save any data that we might need if the activity is destroyed. Okay, so this method is called after the activity has been stopped. That's after unstop. That's when this method is called. So it's called every time that your app goes into the background. Every time your app goes into the background, the method is what's called. So just think of it as kind of like a safety measure. So it just gives you a chance to have like a small amount of information to a bundle as your activity exits the foreground. Okay, so the system actually just saves this data now, because if it actually waited until the app was shutting down, it might be under work or resource pressure. So one thing to note is this: sometimes Android shuts down an entire app process, which includes every activity associated with the app. And Android does this kind of shutdown when the system is stressed and in the danger of what we call visual lagging. So no additional callbacks or code is run at this point. So your app process will just, to just shut down silently in the background, to just shut down. But to the user, it doesn't look like the app has been closed though. Okay, but silently, it has just shut down. When you navigate back to that app again, it will just restart the application. So we actually want to ensure that the user doesn't experience any data loss when this happens. So we're going to override the Unsave instance method now. And so let me take this back, right? Okay, good. So let's override that Unsave instance method. So I'm going to unsave. So we have it on save instance. Okay, so we have two. We have the there are actually two override methods here. Okay, so one with just the outstate parameter. This first one has just the this one has just the outstate parameter alone, which is of type bundle, and this other one has the outstate parameter, and then it has what we call an out persistent state parameter. So for this course, we're actually going to be for this. For the purpose of what we want to do, we're just going to be using this one, which is the one that takes only the outstate parameter of type bundle. Okay, so I know you might ask what bundle is, but we'll get to talk about that. Let's just do this. So I'm going to put a log statement here. Of course, I think I copied it so I can. Okay, good. So I'm going to say on save instance called. So let's just see that. Let's just see that. So let's apply these changes and then bring out our logcat. We can just clear this out. Okay, yeah, I might have to reinstall and restart the application. Okay, so logcat. Okay, yeah, we have that. So now let's see when this method is being called. So I'm going to change the configuration so you can see it. On pause, you lost focus. On stop, it was no longer visible. So before it destroyed the application, on save instance was called. So at this point, you can save certain amount of information, okay, that you need. After it took the information it can save, then it destroyed it, created it again, start, and then on resume it became on start it became visible, on resume it gained focus. Okay, so that's actually what that does. So let's now actually write a code. We want to actually save these values. Okay, we want to save these values. Okay, because like we noticed, after just 525 and everything, so when we just switch to landscape, we lose it. We lose it. So that's because in this method, we have not actually saved that value. So let's see how we can actually do that. So I'm going to add a constant. I'm going to add just to our, we've already created also below this, I'm going to add const val. So I'm going to, let me just name this key. Okay, let's do a key revenue. Okay, and this is going to have what we'll call, let's give it a value of revenue key. So this is basically mapping. Okay, and then one other thing. So let me change this to, yeah. And okay, so sorry. So let's make this. Okay, so this is just recreating a key. Okay. So we will now, this is what we're going to do. So I'm now going to go down into my Unsaved instance method. I'll go into my Unsaved instance method. Okay, so now we want to retrieve, because we're actually going to use those keys for both saving the data and retrieving the data from the instance state bundle. Okay, so if you notice, we have this out state parameter, and then we have, it's actually of type bundle. So what is a bundle? Yes, we are there now. So a bundle is just a collection of key value pairs. That's a bundle. So of course, you know key value pairs. We've talked about maps and everything. So a bundle is just a collection of key value pairs where the keys are always strings, always. You can actually put simple data like int, Boolean values into your bundle. So because the system actually keeps this bundle in memory, okay, it's actually best practice to keep the data in the bundle small. It's actually best practice, keep it small, because the size of this bundle is limited. Okay, though the size actually varies from device to device. So if you store too much data, you can actually risk crashing your application with an error of transaction. There's this transaction too large exception error. Okay, transaction too large exception error. You can actually check that out. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. So in this method, so we're going to now do something. So I'm going to say out state, which is the parameter of type bundle, dot put int. So it's going to take a key, and the key, let's take the first one, key revenue. So key revenue, and then we're going to give it a value. So the value we want to give, so the revenue here is this this guy, right? Yes, this one, the revenue, how much? So the think from the design, let's see, revenue should be the, yeah, so revenue is actually the ID for that. And then we'll also do the same thing for the other one, which is the key dessert sold, and then the value is dessert sold. Okay, so just to show you what this is actually, we have actually created a variable here that by default they have a variable 0. Okay, but they can actually, they are just an ID, so don't really bother about that. Okay, so then what, yeah, what then? So we have actually just put, we have actually gotten these values. So what basically is going to do is that before, at the point where on stop is called, made after on stop is called, once it gets to on safe instance state, it's now going to take in these values. It will take it and hold it for us. So how do we now restore this bundle data? So notice, after the unsafe instance, it is destroyed. and then the activity is created. So it is in our Oncreate method that will restore the bundle data. Okay, it is restored in the Oncreate method. So you can actually restore it in two methods. Actually, there's the Oncreate method, which we already know about. The Uncreate method, you can actually see it has a saved instance state of type bundle. Saved instance, that is an instance has already been saved. Saved instance of type bundle. You can actually use that, or there's actually there's another method called on restore instance state. You can also use this. Okay, you can also use this, so you can try that out on your own. Okay, but we're going to typically be mostly be using it in the Uncreate. So how do we do that? Okay, so you can actually see, like I said, you see this parameter saved instance state of type bundle. So that's what we're actually going to use. So the Uncreate actually just gets a bundle every time it is called. Every time the Uncreate method is called, it gets a bundle. So when your activity is restarted, maybe due to a process of shutdown, the bundle you saved is just passed into Uncreate. So if your activity was starting afresh, the bundle is null because nothing was saved. So if the bundle is not null, that means you're actually recreating the activity from a previous point. So just note this: if the activity is being recreated, the method I showed you, which is the onRestore instance callback, it's actually called after the onStart, also with a bundle. But most of the time you restore the activity, most of the time you restore the activity state in Oncreate. But because that onRestore instance state is actually called after onStart, if you need to restore some state after Oncreate, you can actually use that. So let's actually do that. So we set something that if your activity is starting afresh, okay, your bundle is null because there's nothing saved. If the activity is starting afresh, your bundle is null because there's nothing saved. But if it is not null, that means you're actually recreating the activity. So we need to check if that bundle is null. We need to do a check. We need to do a check. So this is what I'm going to do. I'll just say this. Just gonna say if, and then I'll say saved instance is not equal to null. So if it is not equal to null, we're going to get something. So if it is not equal to null, it means it actually has a value. So I'm going to now take revenue, which is the global variable created. Just say saved instance dates dot get int. So now we want to get the value of the revenue. Okay, get int, and then we need to pass in our key. Our key is key revenue. Okay, and then of course the default value is 0. So if it is not null, okay, it gets that for us. So what have we done here? So the test for null, it actually just determines, like I said, whether there is data in the bundle. So, or if the bundle is null. So this actually just says that the app has actually has been started afresh or has been recreated. Depends on what it is, whether null or not null. So it's a common pattern actually when you're trying to restore data from the bundle. So if you notice, we use the key here, key revenue. Okay, it's the same key we used for the put int when we created this. It's the same key we used for the put int, key revenue. Okay, then so to actually make sure you use the same key every time, it's actually best practice to define them as constants. That's why we did what we did. It's actually best to define them as constants, so you will not run into issues. Okay, then the get int method is used to get data out of the bundle. Now, because we used put int, that's why we're using get int. Okay, so basically it actually takes two parameters: the string, which is a key, the key, and then a default value. The reason for the default value is in case no value exists for this key. In case there's no value that exists for this key, it will now give it a default value. Okay, so because the integer you actually get from the bundle is assigned to this revenue variable, and then your UI will use that value. So let's now get the other one. The other one is dessert sold, and we'll use as parameter, which is saved instance state dot get int, and then the key is, I think that's just, yeah, key dessert sold, and then default value also of 0. So let's now see this. Okay, okay, sorry, get int. Okay, so let's test this. I'm going to run this, open up the logcat. Well, don't really need to open up the logcat, but let's just see what's going on here. So I'm applying changes. I hope I don't have to restart the application. Okay, I have to. So we're going to see Oncreate being called again. Sorry, logcat. Yeah. So on create, on start, on resume. So let me click on this cupcake 5 times. Okay, so look at, we have 5 desserts were sold, and then the revenue is $25. Okay, so let's now rotate this device. So by rotating this device, let's see if we'll lose everything. Moment of truth. And then we don't lose anything. So it actually saved it for us. Okay, so this time it actually displays the correct revenue. But something else, if you notice, if you actually looked very well, we didn't have this image before. We didn't actually have this image before. It's actually changed. So this one too changed. Okay, for some of us that may have missed that, let's try this again. So let's run it again. Let's try it again so you get to see. So pay attention. I'm going to, okay, so let me just close it. And open it again. Okay. So notice I'm going to click this image 5 times, and then it will change to a do not. Okay, good. So when I rotate this device, I actually want to also still see the do not. But when I rotate the device, it changes to a cupcake, though, but these other ones are saved because we saved it. Okay, so how can we fix that? Let's fix that. So in our main activity, there's a method called show current dessert. Yes, this is it. This is a method to show the current dessert. So basically what it's actually doing here. So this method just determines which image should be displayed in the activity based on the current number of desserts sold and the list of desserts in all that. So basically we're getting an all desserts. So this is actually a list. Okay, this is a list. So these are a lot of pictures. So 5 times, or if you click on it 5 times, it changes to do not. When you click on it, when it gets to 20, it should change to another thing. So let's see. So we have a list. So it changes. So the more you click, you have a lot of images. Okay, so 100. Well, I don't have to start clicking on to 100. Okay, yeah. So 50. So at 50, it changes to another image, and then well at 100, it changes to gingerbread, and then honeycomb, and then a lot of that. Okay, so what we are going to now do is we want to preserve a particular image. We want to preserve a particular image. So how do we do that? How do we do that? Okay, so basically this is, let's do something. So let's rotate this back. Okay, let's just minimize this. So let's go to that method and see what's going on there. So var new dessert, so creating a variable where we'll store all these, and then the counts, like it's going to be based on the distance. So okay, so for dessert in all desserts, so if the dessert sold is greater than or equal to the dessert dot production amount. So this guy is actually from here. are, and this is just for every, this can be any variable. So for every, you can even say X, you can say Y. Okay, so for each one inside this list, okay, get the production amount. So if the one sold is greater than the production amount, we need to now update this variable with that particular dessert. That's that particular image. Okay, so you can actually see it here. There's a comment there. The list of desserts is sorted by the start production date. So as you sell more, you start producing more this dessert and everything. So it gets to increase. So let's now do something. Let's do something. So how can we work this out? So basically, this method relies on the number of desserts sold to change the right image. That's basically what it does. So we don't actually need to do anything to store a reference to the image in the bundle. You don't really need to do that, okay? Because in the bundle, we're already storing the number of desserts sold, right? In our bundle, we're already storing the number of desserts sold in our bundle. And it's also being used here in this method. So what I'll just do is very simple. I'll just come to my Uncreate method. Okay. So in the Uncreate method that actually just restores from the bundle, I'm just going to call the show dessert method. That's all. So based on the value it gets here, okay, it will now run this method also. And what does this method do? This method basically just checks, it just relies on the number of desserts sold to choose the right image. So of course we are getting the number of desserts sold here. We're getting it back. So immediately get it here, and then you have to call this method. Of course, it's now run this application, and it just gets from the dessert sold to know the right picture to actually display. So let's run that and then see. Let's run that and then see what happens. So I'm gonna run this application. Okay, so let's do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it has changed. So let's now rotate. Okay, so our app is crashing. So let's find out what happened. Oh, I like when app crashes. I get to learn. So well, I just have to take this out because I want to see. Okay, so we have an error here. It says late init property binding has not been initialized at show current, okay, at this method. So this has not been initialized, okay. Okay, dessert button, okay. And then we're now calling it at Oncreate, okay. So that's actually, and so this is how we can work this out. So let's see. So this method, okay, so yeah, running this on, so on creating it has not initialized this guy. Okay, so the question is why? So let me see that error again. Sorry, not local. Okay, so these images on desert clicked is outside this method. So where is this method called? Let's see. Okay, so in our create, we have this. So when we create it, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I want to try something. See, our code runs line by line. So when we actually run this application, we now want to, it checks for a saved instance, okay? Checks for this and everything, and then it wants to call this method. It wants to run this. Okay, so how about okay, how about I just do this? Okay, so let's see. What if I do this? I like to do trial stuff out. What if I do this? Okay, let's try that. Let's try that. Relating this property. I need to know which of the, has this run, or was I showing some with current desserts? Sorry, I think I may have chosen the wrong thing. Let's see. Okay. Okay. This is outside it. Okay, so let's see. No. Let's take it back here. What have I done? Okay, good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and rotate. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, that works. That works. So it saves it. Okay, so you know your code runs top to bottom. Okay, so it's like at the point where we had this above, because we had it above this inflation. When we are setting the content, that's when we were doing this. So we're running the application for the first time. Okay, you want to now make use of a method inside this, which is this desert binding.desert button, but it has not even been initialized. So we were trying to use it before. Let me just undo that. So we're trying to use a variable, a binding variable that is inside here, which is this young man. We're trying to use it before the actual setting content view and everything. So that was why. So of course, you need to always realize your code runs top to bottom, left to right. So that's this actually sorts that out. So that sorts it out. So guys, that's actually a lot about Lifecycle. Okay, that's a lot. We've actually looked at Lifecycle. We've talked about logging. We've talked about preserving activity state. We've also talked about configuration changes. It's a lot. So I'm actually there's some stuff I'm just going to drop for you guys. Just 1 or 2 images that actually is like a summary of everything we just talked about. So I'll drop it on the Slack channel for us to still go through and so we can. So the thing is, you can actually play around with this application. So this is what this is what I want you guys to do. Okay. It's not it's not an assignment that you submit. Okay, but I'd love to see someone who would try it and send to me for review. Okay, I would love to see someone who would try it. You can send the link on the channel. You don't need to send it to me privately. You can just send the link. So I would love to see someone who will create an app, just a simple application that has a code to test every, the lifecycle methods. Create an application on your own, test it out, then create an application that will take for us to be able to preserve and store data. Okay, so it could just be let's say 2 text views, okay, that you're giving a number. So just put 2 text views, run it, and do a configuration change. See if the number changes, maybe after a calculation. Just do a simple calculation and display and see if it does. So if it changes, use the concept of bundle and save your instance. Try your configuration changes and see if it gets to save the data. So yeah, so I would like to see you guys try that out and drop on this for us to review. So it will be nice. And then on Monday, probably, if we're going to have a revision class, we'll get to really talk about certain things surrounding that, or review some person's work and maybe talk about it. So that's that. So any question before we call it a night, not a day? Do we have questions? I know I've actually said a lot. So before that, God first. I don't know. Why does this feels like the first time I'm seeing you on this call? Okay, so so Emmanuel Opala is asking if there's no assignment this week. Okay, I just gave you guys one now. So I just gave you guys one. I gave you guys one, but I'm not going to grade it. So let me see people that the only thing they know is grading. If you don't grade, I'm not going to do assignments. So with this, I'll know people that are seeing this program as a tax-based promotion kind of thing. So that's your assignment, but I'm not going to grade it. I'm not going to grade it. Okay, Godfrey, you say it's your second time. Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to grade it, but it's an assignment. Okay, so I don't know. I'll still drop it on the Slack. So just create an application that that actually shows everything you've learned today. Okay, your application that shows. So your code, I want to see you in your code. I want to see you. How would I put it? I want to see your callbacks. Yes, I want to see your callbacks in your code. I want to see how you're saving an instance. So I'm not giving you ideas of what kind of application you want to build, but build an application that will help us to show these things that we have learned. Okay, don't go and overdo or don't even underdo. Okay, so Emmanuel is saying that's practice now. Hello, wouldn't deny the task motivates us. Oh, this is also a task. The truth is, if I see two people, only 2 or 3 people doing it, I can change my mind and grade it. Me, I'm like that though. I used to shock people. Okay, I used to shock people. So, Judah, go ahead. Your hand is raised.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Please, I have a question, more like two questions. I've always had this confusion whenever people talk about functions being overridden, like they want to override this function, and then also when they talk about extending a class. So I've been hearing it and then using it, but it's like I don't actually know what it means or what it actually does. So maybe could you explain?
Judah, okay. I think we had a class when we talked about this. Yeah.
We had a class where we talked about classes. Wow, that's interesting. Yes. So, first of all, I would recommend you actually
I
go.
think it's possible I was in that, but I didn't.
Okay. Well, let me see if I can just run that, but it's still good to go through. Okay. So when we override, like, okay, let me put it like this. You have a car class, let's say a class of cars, okay, and there are several things that there are basic properties and functions that every car has. There are basic properties. Like a property is color. Every car has a color, whether you like it or not. Another thing is another function that every car has is that every car can let's say, um, what will I use? What will I use? What will I use? Okay, every car has will I use speed? Yeah, I think. Yeah, yeah. Every car has what? Speed. Okay, so of course, to calculate the speed of a car, I think there's this, you actually have to do some calculation. So that's a function. Okay, so we have every class and every car rather having properties and functions that is generic to whatever car it is. As far as it is a car, you have this property and I have this function. So when I want to create an object of that car, that means I want to create a type of that car. That's basically what I'm doing. Now, I am actually to use their methods already that I can actually, by extending that, by inheriting that class, by creating an object, you have access to it, right? Now, but when you create another class, a subclass of a car, okay, and you inherit from it, you have to override the methods. Override the methods means, look, you have to use this. It's basically just telling you you can use this method the way you like. Okay, the method exists already. You can't change the fact that that method is there. For example, overriding the Oncreate function. Now let me show you this Oncreate. You can see my screen. I'm going to just open up this. Well, so there's already a one in the function Oncreate and it's defined in blah 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 and different. So I just want to find usages in the base declarations. So let me just open this. So you have the super.Oncreate. So let me open this one. So you can actually see this class, the Oncreate class. It has this override this thing. So this Oncreate class now is what we are overriding. This belongs to the app compact activity class. This Uncreate method, it belongs to the what? App compact activity class. At the same time, this young man also was overridden, so it has a super.uncreate. So opening up this one, then you now see the main guy, which is this young man in the fragment activity class. So if you notice, this particular Uncreate, these are the things it does. But when you come here, you can just implement. It's basically just saying, what you have the fact that you're okay. For example, I think I used one in instance of you, a man who actually gives his, dies and his son inherits. The truth is this: you're inheriting everything that is in that company, but you are fat. You cannot say that your dad left everything in your name, and then you want to say, no, I don't want to inherit the house. I want to inherit just the parlor. No, you take in everything, then you override it. So overriding now is when you can use it the way you want to use it. So, for example, assuming there's a way to get the color of a car, okay, and any other car can decide that, look, I don't want to get my color that way, or I don't want to calculate my speed that way, or I don't want to be known to do it this way. I want to override it and do what I like. So that's just the whole concept of override. So from the word override, you're kind of doing things that this is what you're supposed to, but no, you don't want to do it this way again. You want to actually just do it your own way. So I'll still advise you actually go through that class again. Okay, or maybe I'll just drop a resource for the whole inheritance stuff, and then you get to go through it. I don't really want to talk much, so I just hope that kind of answers you in a way, but I'll still recommend you go through the class again. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of stuff on the chat. Okay, that's practice now. Hello, won't deny it. Okay, let's finalize it here. It's great. Oh, so Emmanuel, you're the gradable type, right? Okay, so still awaiting the expo on interpreting syntax in. Okay, yes, I think I forgot about this. So I think we'll work. Let's see if we can have that on Monday. Wow, there's a lot of things I forgot to know. God first, please keep your number. I don't know if you're among. A lot of things I've forgotten. Wow. Okay, yeah. I think I'll have to look into this tonight. Okay, so any other question? Any other question? Okay, so let's finalize it now. So all thanks to Emmanuel Opala, I'm going to grade it. Let me make Emmanuel look bad now. All thanks to Emmanuel Opala, I am going to grade it. So your task is to the task is going to be to create an application. I don't know, create whatever you like. Okay, but I want to see these things we talked about. I want to see the you having to use the saved instance to save data, and then it gets, of course, in your advertised link, I'll switch to configuration and then get to see if data is being lost. It's just a very simple application that you can do. It doesn't have to be too fine, but I'm more of the functionalities than the beauty. So if you're trying to do a lot of beauty, well, it's fine, but I'm not going to be moved by it. I'm more concerned about the functionality. We'll get to the point where we actually have to talk about you doing good designs. Of course, as a developer, you'll be given designs. As an Android developer, you'll be given designs. So of course, you have to do what the design is required. So any other question? So I've given the task, okay? So just in case I don't drop it this night, you already know what to do, so you can start working on it. But I'll drop it for the sake of those who, well, the way I'm even going to drop the assignment, they'll have to attend the class for them to understand it. So thank you guys very much. So in the absence of nothing, the absence of no other questions, this is me saying good night and have a wonderful, sweet dreams. Yes, thank you very much. So see you on Monday or see you on